hear this a lot from entrepreneurs. They're like, I don't want to crowdfund because it's like I'm begging for money. Like you're going, oh, please, sir, can I have some more? No, absolutely not.
Kumusta mga kakwentuhan? Jay Olos here and welcome to One CFO's KwentuOne podcast season 2. In this season, we will address the key growth challenges businesses face in the Philippine market. We'll share real solutions through real talk with entrepreneurs, innovators, and leaders. So, handa na ba kayo to talk something up super cool that's changing the funding game for the Philippine startups and SMEs? If yes, then tara na. And today, we're diving deep into crowdfunding with Mr. Brandon Leong, a fintech specialist with expertise in innovative financial solutions. So Brandon is the business unit lead of Round One, the Philippines' first equity crowdfunding platform. So I'll let Brandon speak later about what Round One is doing, what equity crowdfunding is all about. But for now, Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me.
All right. So I guess the first question I want to ask, everybody wants to ask, is um, what is crowdfunding? Especially for Philippine SMEs, I think this is the first time that a lot of them are hearing this, right? So, what is crowdfunding, and then later on, what is equity crowdfunding?
Sure. So yeah, great question to kick off, and also thanks for having me, Jay. So crowdfunding is not this new concept, right? I think for a long time, and we always say this, people have always gotten together to fund something, fund a project that really needed the support from the crowd, right? So people have been doing it for such a long time. We use the term crowdfunding nowadays because there's a tech component. There's the ability to bring people together, through social media technology, information technology, and the use of those platforms to really scale up crowdfunding, right? So it's also been sort of in its fintech form for over a decade now. So essentially, it's a way for people to get together, pool their money into any kind of venture or project that they find to be impactful,
Right.
right? Now, equity crowdfunding is a subset of that, or it's a type of crowdfunding, right? People in the audience might be familiar with donation-based crowdfunding,
Yeah.
Kickstarter,
GoFundMe.
GoFundMe,
Yeah.
right? Gava gives locally, Spark Project locally.
Right.
Equity is then a little different because it's not just donations, it's also investing in a company. It's basically, and some people may ask too, isn't the stock market kind of like that? And the answer is kind of yes.
Yes.
The capital market, the stock market is a crowdfunding platform.
Yeah. In principle,
You know,
they're actually raising money from the public as well.
correct,
Yeah.
correct, yeah. But there's a big difference I always need to mention, which is crowdfunding doesn't have a market like the stock market, right? So the stock market, you can IPO, you can say, hey, invest in my company if you're Jollibee, for example, and then you can trade, right?
Mm.
With crowdfunding as it is right now in the Philippines, you can't trade yet. So it's a
Right.
different kind of
And
premise.
these are basically private companies,
Yeah,
which is as opposed to the stock exchanges. These are public companies,
right, right.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember the early days of crowdfunding. It's quite popular in the U.S. with Kickstarter, GoFundMe. You know, people are really chipping in, contributing into a certain project. It's not equity crowdfunding. You just don't really want to help some project, right? So, and in return, probably they get some freebie, something like that. But in terms of equity crowdfunding, they're actually investing in a business.
Correct.
So they
Right.
are becoming shareholders of those businesses that
Yeah.
are doing equity crowdfunding. So, which now brings me to the next question. Like, why start an equity crowdfunding platform,
Right.
specifically here in the Philippines? So, can you tell us about the journey of Round One?
Sure. So, we've been in the capital markets for a really long time. The company that started this, that I'm also a part of, is a local stockbroker,
Mm.
right? So we did see the Jollibee IPO. We have seen IPOs ever since the 1980s. There's a certain kind of company that wants to take itself public, and these are very mature. They want to grow fast. So fast forward like to the present day. That ability to find equity investors at scale is something that equity crowdfunding is trying to unlock, right? So there was a lot of overlap with what we've been doing, what our competencies have been in the financial services world. Startups are a group that also need access to
Right,
capital,
of
right?
course.
It's very difficult, as we know. I mean, I don't have to go over the painful experiences of businesses here, but like approaching banks, talking to strategic partners, trying to find access to capital in every way just to keep the lights on,
Right.
much less growing. So it's another tool for startups to explore that is outside of the usual bank and debt and bootstrapping that every business needs. So it kind of grew out of that. And plus, we were really bored during COVID. Just kidding. No, I mean,
Yeah, I think
it was.
the first time I heard about round one was during the clubhouse days. Remember when
Yeah,
everybody, when all of us are inside our houses, and there was
right.
this new app that's
Yeah,
super cool. I think that's
yeah,
the first time I heard about round one.
right.
Yeah, so and I'm happy to finally meet the person behind round one now. Before I was just listening, I'm just one of the audience inside this that clubhouse. How do we call it back then? Rooms?
Yeah, with Paul, right?
Yeah, yeah, with Paul.
Yeah, what
Paul.
was it called? I forgot. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Paul. I'm sorry, you
yeah, Paul.
forgot
Hi.
the name of the
Yeah, I'm
clubhouse
with
here.
Paul anyway with Back to Ventures. Hi, Paul. So round one. So does it mean that round one equity crowdfunding platforms like round one are also regulated by the PSC or the SEC?
Ah, that's a great question. So, that's another big difference between donations crowdfunding and equity crowdfunding, right?
Mm,
We're regulated by the securities laws framework.
mm,
There's certain things that you can and can't do when you're offering investments to people, right?
mm,
You have to keep in mind that there's a huge amount of responsibility and accountability when you're saying, hey, give me your money. I'm going to be responsible for it to grow this business and hopefully give you a return,
mm.
right? So we're in fact regulated by the SEC. During the time when the Philippines came out with its crowdfunding rules, plainly, it means that there's more investor protections, right?
Mm.
There's more ways to screen a potential startup before it gets presented to your average investor.
Right.
And I think that's incredibly important, right? That's why the stock market is the way it is.
Yeah.
There's a certain bar of professionalism, corporate governance, transparency that's meant to allow an investor to make the best decision
Mm,
and to be protected in every way legally that the government can enforce.
mm,
Of course, things have to be more flexible for startups, but startups at the very beginning, or SMEs, or companies that aspire to be listed one day or IPO one day, need to know as early as now,
mm.
you need to implement the foundations for
Right.
being that kind of company,
Yeah.
right? So sorry for the long answer.
No, that's okay. I really
That's
like what you said
yeah.
because you're right. I mean, especially for SMEs these days, a lot of them really want to grow their
Mm,
businesses, but
yeah.
because we also do have a lot of SME clients, right? So
Mm,
when every time we talk to them and we try to look at their books, their financials, I would say not all of them has the right foundation.
mm,
So I think the discipline that can also be built by doing with working with equity crowdfunding platforms like Round One, it somehow builds that discipline in them. Like, oh,
yeah.
I need to really fix my cap table. Oh, I'm a sole proprietor. I cannot issue shares. I need to convert to a corporation. Oh, as simple as
Hmm,
that,
hmm.
right? And then also I need to really to think about my business from strategy down to a financial standpoint. How can I, convert or translate my vision into viable financials, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because at the end of the day, when you talk about the PSC, the stock market, there are always like mandatory reporting disclosures, as we put it, right? Because I trade in the stock market myself, so every now and then I always receive these kinds of information disclosures,
right.
right? The financials or even just movement in the that specific company that I invested in. So um, SME owners, particularly Filipino SME owners, needs to understand that
Yeah,
they need to, and I'm speaking from a financial person's standpoint,
uh,
that you cannot just go to the PSE later on, knocking on their doors. Oh, I need to raise funds, I need to IPO. It cannot happen just a snap of it. There's a
yeah.
bunch of process and foundations that need to lay down first. And I think, yeah, the process, which is my next question.
Mm,
So round one, when I look at your website, you cater to like both the companies and also to the investors, right? Let's go first with those companies who are wanting to raise money. So, can you give us an overview of what the process will look like?
Right.
If I, for example, I'm company one CFO and I want to raise, say, 50 million pesos, what the process typically looks like?
Sure, sure. Thanks for echoing what I was mentioning about like the structure and the regulations, right? They're very important. So step one, call Jay is the first step.
Thank you.
Because there's an element of I call it corporate house cleaning, right? So, you have your business, you have to be very efficient in the way you record your financial data because it's a decision making tool at the end of the day. If you're the business owner listening to this, right, you know the pain of everyone's gone home and you're still checking, oh, is everything there? Are all the cents accounted for, right? So having a good financial operations and management structure in place. And eventually, when you're talking to investors, when you're talking to your partners, you need to be able to be efficient in giving them reports. So you've done the hard work of running the business. At the end of the day, you can see the big picture through the numbers of how your business is doing, where you need to improve, and so on and so forth. So that is the most important part, to have your financial house in order. And I just also want to say too, it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's tedious, it's difficult, it's painful, right? But you're setting yourself up for success for the long term.
Right.
I think that's what's important. Okay, let's take the fundraising, for example, right? All right, I want to raise $1 million. How much of my company do I need to give away?
Right.
How much equity do I need to offer?
Yeah.
Right? That's the number one question. That is like the next question after how much funds you need. Now, if you don't have the financial data basis, how do you even know what your company is worth?
Yeah.
And the problem is, if you don't know, you're giving your company away for too cheap,
Yeah.
or you're too
Too
expensive,
expensive. Yeah.
and people will go, forget it, bye bye. So, yes, that's annoying that you have to clean house, but that spring cleaning is going to create so much value for you. So, that's one. After that, it's important to ensure that all the company information that you have, so outside of the financials, like the legal, your
Right.
company registration, oh, did you pay your mayor's permit, right? Like, someone invests in your business and you're like, oh, you forgot to submit your business permit. You can't even run your business. What are we doing? What are we
Yeah.
doing? Yeah.
Even that simple can be a deal breaker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So you have to make sure that house is in order.
Mhm.
And then after that process, it really comes down to, okay, identifying how much you need to fundraise, right? It's an easy question to answer, but what's not easy is to explain why. When you raise funds and then you're going to inject it into your business, it's fuel, it's jet fuel, you're supercharging what you're doing. You really have to explore how you're most efficiently going to use those funds,
Right.
right? How are you going to make those financial decisions about efficiency and the best use of those funds if you don't call Jay? If you don't know,
Or even you don't
you
call
know,
Brandon.
call Jay first. So understanding the like how much you want to raise, but like why, and what are you going to do with that to supercharge your business, right? From there, there's luckily a template for how you develop your investment pitch. Generally across the board for investors, they want to know things like, okay, what's the problem that you're trying to fix? What kind of product demand is your company trying to address, right? What's your go-to market strategy? You can literally, and I always encourage businesses to do that, listen to pitches.
Right.
Google pitches. Sit there and be like, oh, this is how this guy talks about his company. If I want to attract investors, strategic partners, even more customers,
Mhm.
I need to talk about my business in this way.
Right.
So you create those kinds of investor materials. You've probably heard it before.
Yeah.
Pitch deck,
Pitch decks. Yeah.
investment deck, so on and so forth. So really get that. And the content that comes from that is really from your business planning.
Yeah.
So please do a business planning
Yeah.
exercise,
Yeah.
even if it's over beers on a napkin. Hey guys, you're talking to your partners. What's our go-to market strategy? How are we going to be sustainable?
Yeah.
One of you heard about a competitor that's coming. How are we going to compete? Come on, guys, let's bang this out.
Yeah.
And then from that content, you're creating a compelling investment proposal.
Yeah.
You know, this is why we need money, because there's competition all around us. But if you give us this money, we're
Mm.
going to fight back even harder. Something
Yeah.
like that, right?
And
Yeah.
and to add on that, I think it's also very important that they think from a point of view of an investor. What
Mm,
would an investor would want to see?
exactly.
Like if you're an
Right.
investor, what are the items or the areas that you will want to kind of take off, want to see, want to make sure that you're comfortable really with before you actually decide to invest.
Mm,
So those are very on point. Pitch deck. Again, from a finance standpoint, I want to see a financial model. I want to see how the proceeds will be employed or will be deployed to move to the next level. If you're saying you're going to be hitting X number by year 3, year 2, year 4,
yeah.
how are you going to do that? I want to see
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, being a finance guy that I am, and most of investors are, of course, they review the pitch deck, but at least in my experience, they also look at your projections. If your pitch deck and the narrative in the pitch does not really align with what is in your financial model
Yeah.
or your financial projection, that can also be a deal breaker.
Yeah. Here's a good example, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you want to implement tech to scale your business, right? And then the investor is going to say, where's your tech guy? Right. So this
Oh, we
is,
outsource.
you know what I'm saying? Well, I mean that's a fair
Yeah.
answer, right?
Yeah.
But you have to be ready for that,
Yeah.
right? You have to be ready for, if you're gonna say you're gonna do something,
Mhm.
what's your plan to get there? So I that's great that you brought that up.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, at least in our experience, clients go to us and ask us to help them on the fundraising. But look, we can only provide like help in terms of translating what they want to achieve on this round by
Mm,
translating those into financials, like the
mhm.
numbers, right? But everything that you said is on point. Like, what really is your strategy? Why do you need the money?
Yeah.
The first place, how are you going to convert that money to something really valuable so that your investors will be having return later on?
Yeah.
They're investing in you because they want some returns, right?
Yeah.
This is not
Yeah.
charity.
Yeah.
so so it's very important, and I like what you said about the tech component, because a lot of I say SMEs, I would say, these days, because of the prominence of the investing rounds at the tech scene.
Mm,
They're trying to be techy themselves,
yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
in round one, do you need to be really a tech company or no?
No, actually, we're open to many different kinds of industries and businesses.
Mhm.
It just so happens that being a digital platform, we get a lot of tech
Yeah, yeah,
kind of queries and stuff like that. So, absolutely not.
yeah,
I mean, if you look at other crowdfunding platforms overseas, they're doing product launches. They are doing blended, like it's a social enterprise, for example. So,
mm,
earn money, help people.
mm,
That's awesome, right?
right,
So that all comes out in the narrative. That all comes out in the strategy, right?
mm,
Like,
mm,
we want to help farmers because the farmers are growing a certain kind of value added product. We're going to help them profit, but we're also going to bring livelihoods. So it's all connected together, let's say in that example pitch, right?
right,
You can ask yourself at that point, do I really want to go public
mm,
on a crowdfunding platform and talk to like 1,000 people?
mm,
Is this really the kind of project that's going to get people like, yeah, I want to support that because it's going to impact me, it's going to impact the world that I live in? Or do you want to take what we've just been talking about so far and just talk to private investors, get your feet wet, test it out?
mm,
What's the feedback?
mm.
Let me pitch to my grandma. Would she invest in me? Do I make financial sense to my uncle?
Yeah,
Let them be candid to you about what they think, right?
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, as Jay mentioned, they're looking for a return. Come on, you have to
right.
give it to them, right?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
yeah.
So if one, say that we have an entrepreneur audience watching right now, and they want to get onboarded in the round one platform, what do they need to do? Do they need to register? Can you give us an overview of the process?
Yeah, so just on a practical level, you can onboard onto the platform, submit some very basic registration details. We usually like to do a consultation with one of the team members. So we kind of feel you out. You pitch to us essentially what you want to do, and we pitch to you what we can help you with.
Yeah. So
Um,
it's a conversation, right?
Right, correct. Because everyone is different. Everyone has different needs. I'm more than happy to put myself out of business and say, maybe you can talk to the bank, you know,
Yeah.
maybe, or like, wow, based off of your revenues, you don't need to raise funds. I mean,
Wow.
why break your back like that? Because at the end of the day, if you're not successful, that we're not successful. You know, it's something like that. Like we don't push anyone into the endeavor because
Yeah.
if it's not a fit for them,
Yeah.
you know, and then after that, we give you the tedious requirements that hopefully you're already called Jay at this point, and we're asking you for details like, again, the investment deck items, your model. Do you have a valuation? Do you need one?
Mm,
Do you have an investment summary already? Like, what are you going to offer them?
mm,
So on and so forth. And we
okay.
just build up to that point, and we make sure that if you are serious about going to the crowd, talking to lots of people, do you have a investment marketing strategy in place? It sounds funny,
Right. Yeah.
but it becomes a marketing concern at some point where you're having to say, okay, am I talking to the right investor audience,
Mm,
right? If I'm not a tech startup, why would I want to talk to a tech VC?
right.
You'd be wasting their time, you'd be wasting yours, right?
Right.
So I'm going to position the investment this way. I'm going to give the rationale and the value proposition, and I'm going to keep converting people into investing in me until I reach my target, and then I'm good. Right?
Right.
Does
Okay.
that make sense,
Yeah,
Jay?
yeah, of course.
Kind of.
Let's talk about the marketing side of things. So I when I look at your website, there's this guideline on, a mention of campaigns, pre-campaign, campaign, and post-campaign. So can these fundraisers, for example, I want to fundraise through round one. Can I define like up to when will I be running my marketing, my campaign?
Yeah.
So normally,
Yeah.
how long does it uh, duration?
Well, we've seen anywhere from 3 to 6 months is kind of a sweet spot.
Mm,
If you're not sort of getting the traction by that time, maybe there's like a tweak in the messaging you need to
mm,
do. A campaign can run as long as you want it to. But again, if you're past a certain point, you may want to adjust who you're talking to, how you're talking to them. It really helps to get some interest at the beginning. So when
mm,
you launch a campaign, you already have committed investors. I know
mm.
it sounds a bit counterintuitive, but no one wants to look at 0%
Of
and be,
course.
I'll be the first. Like no one wants to do
Yeah.
that, right? And
That's why
that,
you need to
yeah.
talk to your grandma, your uncle
Yes, exactly.
first.
And and it's what we call market sounding, right?
Yeah.
Investment sounding. Like, how does it sound to you? Is it make sense? And if you can convince them at that point, and you launch, and you have an anchor already, and a group of anchor investors, it makes it easier for other people
Mm,
to also feel like, hey, there's traction, right? So yeah, you can set the
mm.
parameters of the
Okay.
campaign, how much you want to fundraise.
Mm. So
It's really
they
open
can
ended.
basically
Yeah.
do the campaign on the platform itself,
Yes.
right? So
Correct.
because you already have investors in the
Yeah.
platform,
Mhm.
accredited investors in the platform. Okay, I'm just curious. Like for example, there might be some investors who are not yet in your platform, but they also want to participate. Would you advise them to be registered as an investor in Round One platform, or it can be in a backdoor setup? I mean,
Yeah, great question too. So when you're doing crowdfunding, right,
mm,
it's public. Anyone can look at it, anyone can see it. If you have a private fundraising campaign, just as long as you're within the rules about
mm,
private fundraising, which we can also talk about if you ever call us,
mm,
you're fine to do that in parallel, right? In
right,
fact, there's a metric that we've seen where for every $1 of crowdfunding, you may potentially raise up to $4 in private
right,
investors.
yeah,
It's sort of like a way to cast a wide net, advertise what you're doing,
yeah,
but then also have other sort of private, maybe bigger investors that you're
right,
attracting, right?
yeah.
So, yeah, that's
Okay.
absolutely fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think, I mean, in reality, of course, an entrepreneur, I would want to raise from whoever
Yeah.
possible, aligned investor that I can get. It
Yeah.
can be within the round one platform, it can be outside that platform, right? So it can be done in parallel, offline and also online,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's good to know because not a lot of, I would say, entrepreneurs know that.
Mm.
In my experience, I think it's the first time. Are you the first ones that are licensed by the government to do equity crowdfunding?
We are the previous two were
Okay.
licensed before us technically, but
Okay.
they didn't allow startups to equity
I
crowdfund.
see. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for our startup founder listeners or even watchers and clients, I've been talking to them about you guys. I don't know, maybe they're getting intimidated with the long list of requirements.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So they really have to do that. It's the same as, when you create a due diligence or a data room during the due
Yeah.
diligence. It's essentially like a data room
Yeah.
within the Roundwood platform. It's the same requirements,
Exactly.
right?
So I kind of have a follow-up answer to that, right? So, I totally get that there's a million things you need to do, right?
Mhm.
But when an investor wants to explore something, they're going to ask for those
Yeah.
anyways, right? You have to stick it in a Google Drive. Sometimes they want a physical packet,
Right.
right? So if you don't want to do that, then you don't have to talk to investors in fairness, right? There's other ways to access capital.
Mhm.
Now, you may ask yourself, hey, if I can just privately fundraise, what's the point of crowdfunding?
Mhm.
And it's exactly that. Are you ready to send those emails out and you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And after they invest, they're going to ask for updates.
Mhm.
And you want a platform where you can easily take, let's say, a financial quarterly report,
Mhm.
blast it to those people. Use digital technology to communicate to your investors better. That's one.
Mhm.
Number two, oh, it's we're such a great company, we're going to get acquired.
Mhm.
And then you have to start calling your investors, hey, we're going to get acquired. I mean, that whole process of having to reach out to these guys, right?
Mhm.
And then lastly, one of the potentials of crowdfunding is that exit, right? I'm an early stage investor in a startup.
Mhm.
I want visibility for someone who may want to get that investment
Yeah.
for me. On a private basis, it's difficult to do
Yeah.
versus if you had a platform where you could say, hey, the company's not being acquired per se, but I want to cash out or
Yeah.
whatever, or I want to, offer this to someone else now.
Mhm.
And crowdfunding kind of raises that visibility for them. So we're thinking ahead. Right now at the beginning, it may seem like, why do I want to do this? But maybe in a year or two, you may
Yeah.
say, I wish I would have done that. I don't know. I don't know, right? Because I think one of the common issues that we have, right, with is saying, okay, it's going to be painful. It's going to be painful, like a surgery,
Yeah.
but you'll feel much better after.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question on the fundraise process. Is there like a threshold, like a minimum or maximum amount that they can fundraise through the round one platform?
Yeah, great question. So there's the regulatory limit,
Mm-hmm.
which is 50 million pesos per year per company.
Mm-hmm.
There is no minimum, but you sort of have to ask yourself, right? If I'm only raising 10,000, 100,000 pesos, what am I gonna do with that? I guess, right? But that's fine. I mean, if it's to develop a POC,
Yeah.
if it's to do something, fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's sort of like this sweet spot where is the amount of fundraising I'm gonna do worth it
Yeah.
for that? And I guess part of the good news too is once you go through the tediousness of setting yourself up,
Yeah.
you don't have to do that again.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a one-time thing.
You just add to the data room, you just keep building on it. And one day when you're going to IPO, that's exactly the things they're going to ask for. What
Right.
is your this and that and everything? Right?
Now let's now go to the other side. If I am an investor and I want to look for investment opportunities through round one, can you give me an overview of the process and if there are criteria also?
So we're always continuing to onboard more issuers and fundraisers.
Mm-hmm.
It's very scant right now. I will be candid about it. When you look at our traction so far, there's been a lot of structural issues in terms of getting fundraisers onboarded. We are really lobbying to make crowdfunding a safe venue for investors to explore, but we hope one day when we can list at scale, right? Investors will be able to put in parameters, look at the type of industries that they're interested in,
Mm-hmm.
filter by tech, filter by uh, AI solution or blockchain solution,
Ah,
right?
okay.
To put in parameters that we know investors are looking for. Oh, I'm an investor. Some of the things I'm looking for are, yeah, is it a sector that is growing fast? I want to see what's out there. So being able to give investors that way to filter, to cut through the noise, and to go directly into an opportunity is what we want to do, right? Since all the information that you have about the companies on there, it's Tinder for business.
Mm.
Swipe left. I'm not going to waste anyone's time. I don't like the company. I don't like the founders. Oh, hey, I want to know more,
Mm.
right? So that process saves you, the
Mm.
entrepreneur, a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be cold calling. You don't want to be entertaining people who,
Yeah.
you sound good to them, but there's a misunderstanding. And then they look at your deck and they're like, oh, this is not what I expected at all.
Yeah.
And then you've wasted everyone, like hours of everyone's time, right?
Yeah.
So we want to shorten that gap between the initial interest and the earnest interest, right?
Mm.
For investors, we can accept foreign investors, local investors. You're really opening yourself up to
Mm.
anyone with an internet connection, right?
Ah, I see. Okay. But
And
they also
yeah,
do need to register, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and it's another pain point too because we have to open up them as investor accounts. So the usual, like we're opening up a bank
The
account or like a
KYC.
Gcash,
Okay.
right? Not everyone is thrilled about doing that, but hey, it's so that we can protect you as an investor. We can
Mm.
be accountable to you as an investor on the platform.
Mm. Okay. Now, I want to ask this question because I'm sure you mentioned earlier that, in terms of, I'd say not a lot of companies are really looking into crowdfunding right now, or maybe there are some who really want to raise through crowdfunding. But what are you seeing are the usual issues? Why is that happening? I mean,
Right?
what's
Yeah.
causing that?
Um, it's usually the requirements, right, Jay? They
Requirements.
look at it and they're like, ha ha. Right, like what's the term? They get shocked by how much
Mm.
work is involved in it. But
Mm.
we also want to make sure that you're set up for the challenges that you'll experience, right?
Mm.
Like, as you mentioned, people are going to be asking about your financial model. Oh, I have to do that. I have to do that anyways.
Mm.
I have to do that as a internal decision making
Right.
strategic anyways. I have to do it for my valuation. So we're telling you right now, whether you want to or not, if you want to get investors, you're going to have to anyways,
Yeah.
right? So telling people like, yeah, fundamentally, it's the pain of doing that first.
Mm.
Second of all, some of the challenges are understanding that it's a marketing concern. I guess if you're in a business where you're selling your products, right? What are you doing? You're doing the same thing. You're talking about how great the company is. You're talking about how great the product is. You're talking about why people want to buy the product. You're talking about why people are going to spend their hard earned money to pay for the premium of your product. You're talking about how your company and product is going to be last forever
Mm.
and last long in the minds of people.
Mm.
So if you have that sort of perspective shift and you're like, yeah, I'm selling my company like it's a product, then it becomes easier to understand what the second difficult challenge of crowdfunding is.
Mm.
And also to say, it's not for me. Like I'm not a marketing guy. I don't want to do this. Right.
Yeah.
But that's basically it. Okay.
So if ever like well, that sounds to me that the more they need, I would say enablers, professionals to, to so they to help them in accomplishing those long lists. Like for example, if they need something on finance, they probably can go to us, or
Yeah.
any other firms or consultants who can that are already in your platform or within your network, right? So yeah, so it's very important. It's a necessary cost. It's a necessary step as well. Even us, when we try to onboard new clients, as basic as KYC, you can ask Marek. It's really becoming a problem. Like
Mm.
there are also some. I guess there's also this Filipino, I would say, trait or culture that we're not that just really as open when we do business. Like
Yeah.
we want to we treat everything, like for example, as simple as the articles of incorporation, or even the audited financial statements. Come on, the audited financial statements are public documents. Why are you hiding it, right? So, so those are basic KYC requirements that we really need to be comfortable giving out.
Mm.
Right, it's a part of the accreditation. When you try to get accredited as a vendor, for example, another business, it will be asked the same,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
there's a reason for why they're asking for that. It's pretty much the same as why we have this list of requirements for those who are wanting to be onboarded in the round one platform. If you have, for our listeners and watchers, if you have issues with that, round one Brandon can refer you to their network of, for example, if you need lawyers, if you need, what do you call this, how about marketing? We also have like
Yeah,
because
yeah, definitely.
yeah, not a lot of entrepreneurs can actually market themselves,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
and that's fine. That's fine. Don't feel bad about that
Yeah.
because that's the whole point of a startup. It's not just one dude. It's not just one lady, right?
Mm,
It's a whole group. It's the Avengers. You
right.
can't find a marketing guy, find a marketing guy.
Yeah.
We're kind of like lawyers,
Mm,
right? You have, instead of a legal case, you
mm.
have a business case. Instead of talking to a judge, you're being judged by investors, right? So you wouldn't walk into a courtroom without a legal advisor.
Exactly.
You wouldn't walk into a pitch meeting without a financial advisor, right?
Mm,
So what we're doing is we're looking at your case. We're saying, does this fit in with the framework? Does this sound right? Is the case good? What's the evidence? How are you verifying your,
mm.
you know, and then we're preparing this for you. Okay, after that, we're going to say, all right, the judges are going to be asking this, and this. You better be ready to answer
Yeah.
them, right? So we hope that if people can recognize that you need that kind of advice when you're being like judged, I hate to say that word, but then you should get an advisor who can properly judge you. I mean, help you be prepared for that judgment.
Mm.
I think it's also an Asian thing not to talk about bad news, right?
Yeah.
Not just a Filipino thing, but like an Asian thing. I always want to say this too, like investors are your biggest fans.
Exactly.
They're technically part of your business. They more than happy to hear bad news because maybe they can help you do something about it.
Mm.
Maybe they can help you find additional capital to hurdle your
Right.
problems. If you don't tell them, they may end up being more upset
Yeah.
because they're saying, I could have helped you. Why didn't you tell me?
Yeah.
So it's okay to show your financial position. It's okay to be candid about it because your biggest fans are there. They want your business to succeed. That's why they invested in you in the first place.
Mm.
There's people out there who can, they don't, no one's expecting it to be perfect in
Yeah.
any world,
Yeah.
much even in the financial world.
Right.
Is that fair to say, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would say the first thing that I notice every time I ask for those kinds of information, and you're very much on point on not being open to disseminating bad news to investors. So speaking of those communications to investors within the Round One platform, I mean, how do you keep the investors engaged and in the loop
Hmm.
of whatever is happening in their equity investment in certain companies?
Right. So it goes again to the financial data reporting mechanism, right? So a couple things, and thank you for that question because if I have to see another balance sheet as an investor, I may jump out a building. Like, it's important to have the numbers
Yeah.
like say something. What does that mean in the context of your story
Right.
as the founder? Like profit margins are down, but that's because we're selling, we're the volumes are increasing, people love our product, but we have to shave down things to make it more affordable. Like, really let those numbers speak. But
Mm,
how can you say that fun story
mm,
without knowing the numbers, right?
mm.
And depending on who your investors are, explore different ways of talking to them. Don't just give them a report and be like, have fun.
Mm,
There's other things that is on their mind. What about having a fireside? What about having a dinner? What about having an event?
mm,
um, at your next corporate event, invite your investors and
yeah.
tell them the story of your challenges. Tell them the story of what's interesting that's going on with
Mm,
your business. Show them that you're a knowledge leader, that you're a thought leader, right?
mm,
Tell them about the trends of the industry, right? So, be creative in the way that you grab people's attentions
mhm.
as it has to do with your business, right?
Okay. I have one question though. As you know, after COVID, there's been like a funding winter in the industry, overall, high interest rates and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So, I've seen fundraisers that are, for example, the founder initially wanted to raise 5 million US dollars, but they were not able to fill that out. Like maybe they only raised 1 million.
Yeah.
So in the round one platform, we call it like an undersubscribed
Yeah.
round. What will happen then? Like what will happen? Will the entrepreneur or founder will still be able to cash that in, or will it be returned to the investors after the campaign?
Unfortunately, the rules are if you don't hit your target, you have to return all the money, right?
All the money. Ah.
So you can adjust.
Mm,
You can revise downward what your target is so it's more manageable if something comes up.
mm,
We work with you on that, right? We
mm,
also, and again, that's why the market sounding is important. So you can sort of feel out, okay, I pounded the pavement for a month privately. I got this
mm.
much. Maybe let's not try to be too ambitious, right?
Right.
But it's an all or nothing. It'd be nice if some countries are like, okay, whatever you raise, you get,
Mm,
right? But there's a good reason why.
mm.
I think the way the regulators think is if you're not interesting enough to get your full amount, maybe you need to revise it anyways.
Yeah.
So there's a reason for it. They're
Yeah.
not trying to be unfair, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's what
That's
happens, Jay.
the
Yeah,
regulation says.
yeah.
Okay. So relatively, I don't know if you would agree with me, but probably safe to say that equity crowdfunding is relatively new here in the Philippines, and but I think we're getting there with so many new entrepreneurs being minted every day, every week, or every month, right? So there's always that, and also SMEs trying to get capital for their growth, for their expansion, and to move them also to the next level, even IPO later on, right? So where do you see this crowdfunding heading
Hmm.
um, in the next few years?
So I think this goes back to one of the challenges of
Mm,
crowdfunding in the Philippines, and it's that unfortunately lots of people have been kind of burned. There's so many bad investments on Facebook that
right.
sound good on paper, but there's problems, right? I'm not going to sit here and say every single one of them is a scam. That's unfair.
Mm,
Some of them are legitimate businesses that legitimately deserve to fundraise, but because perhaps they weren't clear about certain rules,
mm,
like they didn't secure the investment contract, they were not complete in their modeling or valuation, that there was a conflict inevitably with the investors. And because there's no relationship that is official, I suppose.
mm,
Sometimes the fundraiser may just kind of close shop and not talk about anything, right?
mm,
We want to prevent that from happening. Let us tell you how
mm,
to, do some of the things the proper way. Let us flag things that you may need to look into so that you can avoid headaches with investors later on. We know that our wonderful OFW community in the world wants above certain things nothing more than to grow the Philippines, invest in wealth in the Philippines, right?
mm,
So we want to continue to grow, to lobby, to say we're a safe space. We're not only thinking about you, the fundraiser, but you, the investor. There's a lot of, for example, property development investments out there. That's great.
yeah,
I mean, when you look at other countries, that's how intergenerational wealth is built.
yeah,
Why not? And instead of sort of saving up all your life for a plot of land, why not then be able to invest in, let's say, property developments on a fractional basis, right?
right.
Why not do that? We'd
Yeah.
like to see that happen. Franchise is another big growth industry
Mm,
here.
mm,
Instead of saving up to buy a Jollibee franchise, why not invest in someone
yeah,
who's already doing that
yeah,
and just buy a fractional share? So we really want to go into certain growth industries in the Philippines and then say, hey, we're sort of the brand name, if you want to call it
mhm,
that, in investing properly
mhm,
and having accountability and giving you a mechanism to realize the gain and the
mhm,
success from entrepreneurs and supporting them in
mm,
a way that fits in with the legal framework, right?
yeah, yeah.
So,
Okay.
and then of course there's so many interesting tech startups that are coming out of Southeast Asia. And it's great to be able to highlight some of their stories, not just tech impact, whatever climate tech.
Mm,
The idea, the idea people
mm,
of this country, their struggles and their challenges and what they're trying to tackle. That's going to become global problems very soon, right?
yeah.
So we're just continuing to develop that ecosystem.
I really like what you said. As a former OFW myself, I could have invested some of my hard-earned OFW money in those assets. But now, I think, yeah, Round One platform can give more, I would say, avenue or what do you call this, opportunities for those Filipinos who are working abroad to look for viable investments that are pre-vetted, of course, not really scam, right? So which brings me to the idea of, why not also market round one to, expats, Filipino expats. I'm an ex Filipino expat myself, and that's how I started angel investing, by the
Right,
way.
right, yeah.
So it just so happened that I'm in the tech scene. So every time I go home every month here, talk to founders, I chip in some money. Yeah, and then COVID happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, Jay, you're like speaking from experience. That's what's
Yeah,
wonderful about it. You're not It's not theory for Jay to talk about that,
yeah,
right? We'd love to market to them, but entrepreneurs out there, you have to be investment ready.
yeah.
You have to call the surgeon and you know what I mean? Like you have to do the hard work and
Yes, yes.
be investable, right?
It
So
takes two to
yeah.
tango, right?
Mm,
If you really want to get invested, you also need to do your share.
correct. Yeah.
You really need to step up your game and comply all of those
Yeah.
requirements. Okay, so we're now down, Brandon, to our most awaited part of this podcast. So we have this let's get real. So it can be a myth that you want to bust.
Mm,
So basically, the question here is, okay, let's get real. What's one common belief about crowdfunding that you think isn't true?
okay, great question. We hear this a lot from entrepreneurs. They're like, I don't want to crowdfund because it's like I'm begging for money. Like you're going, oh, please, sir, can I have some more? No, absolutely not. Okay, and I'll give an example, right? When the Jollibee founder, right? When Injap wants money, he flies to Singapore and he begs. And no, I'm kidding. Yeah, I mean, it's not begging; it's
Yeah.
lobbying, right? It's stating a case. It's litigating for why you should invest in me. I want to bust that myth right now. You are not begging. Begging would be, oh, please, I really need this. Thank you. It's for me.
Mm,
What you're doing with crowdfunding or any kind of investment proposal is saying, trust me, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to make this vision come true. That's not begging. That's saying that I'm capable, I'm responsible, I'm going to do it. If
mm,
you have that passion in you about your business,
mm,
you should know that bigger companies that are listed are doing that, and we are not those listed companies, right? We are not those big boys, tycoons, taipans.
mm.
We need to step up and match that energy as
Yeah,
best as we can, right?
yeah,
So I don't want anyone to feel that way. If you feel that way, reframe it, like
yeah.
change your perspective and be like, nope, I'm asking for support because I really believe in what I'm doing and I'm going to make it happen.
Confidence.
Yeah.
Confidence. So I think, yeah, that's also one of the things that I look into a founder every time I get approached for investment. I want to see first, are you really confident?
Mm,
Because if you're not confident talking to me, then I'm not comfortable talking to you. That
yeah.
you're also confident building your own business.
Mm,
I really want to see that energy. I really want to, and you're right. It's not really begging. It's fundraising. It is what it is. Those big guys that are what those big guys are doing in the stock market is pretty much the same, right? They're not begging, but they're basically doing business. They want to raise money. So yeah, thanks for that, Brandon. So, again, huge thanks to Brandon for sharing the straight truth and those incredibly valuable insights. So, mga kakwentuhan, we hope you pick up practical tips na makakatulong sa inyo sa negosyo ninyo. And remember, ang challenges ay parte ng pagninegosyo, and we're here to help you in every step. So please like, follow, and subscribe para mas marami pa kayong matutunan at marami pa tayong mabahaginan ng mga learnings dito sa KwentuOne Podcast. Again, this is KwentuOne, real stories, real solutions for real growth. Hanggang sa susunod na kakwentuhan. Ciao!